Subscribe to my channel for interesting stories.
Story 1. A lady apologized for stealing from me 17 years later. In high school I had an 18-year-old boyfriend with an apartment, which I thought was so cool. Of course it was a hangout spot for a lot of people our age. We're from a small town. I forgot my purse there for a couple days. I was an irresponsible teenager. A couple days later I went to withdraw money from the ATM with my debit card and the $400 I had in my account was gone. I was working my first job and this was like 2006, so $400 meant I was full-on rich. Well, it being a small town, we went to the one gas station in town with an ATM and figured out who it was. Two girls I was semi-friends with. We had friends in common and nothing against each other, but didn't go out of our way to hang out. Word on the street was they both got grounded. Well, 17 years later and I get a message from one of the girls that stole the money, apologizing and saying how she talked with her therapist a lot about it and she was really sorry. I responded with that clip of Billy Madison calling Steve Buscemi to apologize, and Steve Buscemi crosses him off his people to kill list. Story 2. My family always makes my birthday awful and I don't know what to do. I am turning 22 in about a month and I am actually kind of dreading it. For the past 5 years I have either been ignored, forgotten or made to cry on my birthday. Ever since I turned 16 my family hasn't really made any effort in doing things on my birthday with me or to celebrate my birthday in general. I also distinctly remember being entirely ignored on my 20th birthday, not a single call or text from any of my immediate family members. For all of my birthdays I would plan stuff for my entire family, mom, dad, older sister, younger brother, to do that I thought would be fun, but they always come up with some excuse for not wanting to do it, so we don't. I would even plan around everyone's schedules, budgets to make sure everyone was available for the things I wanted to do, but they still would cancel on me. What really gets me is this: they go out of their way to celebrate everyone else's birthdays. My siblings always get to go to whatever restaurant they want to go to, as well as do whatever activity they want to do for the day, and get a bunch of presents that they will actually enjoy and use. My parents always get to go out for date nights on their birthdays, and my siblings and I are always sure to get them odds and ends that we can afford that we think they'll like too. But the effort is never made for me. All of my milestone birthdays, 16th, 18th, 21st, have been awful, and so have the other ones as well. Hell, my 18th birthday I got a Sudoku book, I don't even like Sudoku, and a $3 slice of cheesecake from the supermarket. I had to remind my mom about my 21st birthday for weeks leading up to it, and even on the day of, and we still didn't do anything for it because all plans I brought up were shot down. I really just want one birthday where I can sit down at the end of the day and be happy with how the day went. And TBH, I've also kind of given up on thinking that'll happen anytime soon. I don't know why it is this way. I don't think I've done anything wrong. Even if I have, it still shouldn't be okay for this to be the norm. I think this year I'm just going to keep any plans I make under wraps, and if they ask me about anything I'll tell them, but only if they ask. Story 3. Musical journey. According to my zodiac, I ought to be a musician, but that never really happened except for a lame attempt at the guitar and trumpet. Here's the thing. The story. My father was the most country-ass racist you ever run across. I never ever heard anything but country music and religious music growing up. In 1977, Elvis did a TV special. My first exposure to something different. I kinda backtracked after his movies and American Graffiti. I kinda fell in love with 50s doo-wop and R&B Dad tolerated, because he was familiar. I remember one time he took us to see the movie Woodstock, and he was so offended. Shortly after we moved into some apartments in LA. While we were moving in there was a mariachi band playing. I thought, how cool is that? So, I started smoking weed, because it was kinda a thing. Fast forward a couple of years and remember, my exposure was to country music, Elvis and 50s doo-wop. Moved back to Oklahoma and met some in-laws with similar proclivities to smoking weed. I found myself in this apartment with a friend a few years older. He lights an incense and a joint, then puts Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon, on the turntable. From that point, country music for me was gone. My friend followed with the Cars, and my path was set. All the 80s anthem bands hit me right in the heart. My first concert alone, ZZ Top, on the Dougaloo tour, took me right down the southern rock lane. Loved them all. Skynyrd, 38 Special, Black Oak Arkansas, Blackfoot, Outlaws, Lost an Eardrum at Molly Hatchet. There was that few years of that as I found my way to a prospect for a biker gang. Just before that, like me second or third concert was Rush, okay, another whole new world. Progressive, new age, enlightened. I dropped acid for the first time and lost my virginity the same night. Here I am deep into southern rock, doing new drugs, finding new music, drifting into Zeppelin, The Doors, yes, Chicago, kinda thinking I might mellow out. Disco comes and goes, only mildly intrigued, however as I went to a primarily black high school. I kinda got the real education on the R&B, beginning hip-hop, Motown, cool exposure. I'll never forget George Clinton and the Funkadelics. Fast forward a few years, falling in love, getting my heart broke. Fell into major depression as love died. What brought me back? Metal, Metallica, Judas Priest, Anthrax, Motorhead, Pantera. Found my truth in angry pounding music. Still love it. I used to trip my students out, because I look old and conservative. They caught me more than once grading papers too. Breaking the law. One student remarked, I would have never guessed that you was off the chains metal. I said, old school. Here I am today, into stuff like Nick Cave and Tom Waite, with a healthy dose of bluegrass. Who would have thought? What a journey, what a library in my head, kinda feel like I ought to document it. Story 4. Nobody really knows this story. I met a guy on Tinder. I wasn't looking to date, just being that annoying AF girl seeing what's out there. I decided, why not, on a guy and we ended up having this whirlwind romance. We ended up spending so much time together, traveling non-stop road trips and hotels in my state, not too far but different states. He eventually proposed to me and I said yes. He was an undercover cop, he said. We did get pulled over once and they brought in a dog. We had a lot of weed in the car and the dog found it. He informed the cop he an undercover cop, gave his badge number and the cop made a few calls, then they let us go. I truly believe he was telling the truth on that one. Well, after he proposed I figured he should meet my family. I'm just not the type to bring my BF around, and we had a huge dinner. He said he was in the military, but being an undercover cop they had to erase his information about it online is what he told me, and to not tell them he's undercover. Of course I wouldn't. During dinner, he said he was released because of a Purple Heart. All my uncle served was a straight, I'm engaged kinda dinner, and one of my uncles was fishy. Looking into his military records, my uncle knows peeps. He informed my parents he didn't find a record. My parents, being concerned, hired a private investigator on the guy. I had already moved in, and we were living with his lesbian roommate, who was much older than us, 27 at the time, and she was I think mid-40s. He was also obsessed with me taking out my birth control and having a kid right away, but sorry nah. Well, my dad called me home one day. He told me he was secretly married, and the woman lived at the same address as me now. It was the roommate. I couldn't believe it, and went back and asked him about it. He said it was a green card mixed up, and don't judge, but I believed him. His wife was Australian. When I told my friend, she said there's absolutely no such thing as that. I said to him I was leaving and taking my stuff, but first had to find my glasses because I can't drive without them. I will hit a tree, trust me. And he said as a cop he's going to call the cops that I'm on his property without permission. Legally I wasn't on any paperwork or address change yet, but I knew he was crazy at that point. I started hugging him and apologized that he's right and my dad is a liar, and I was just going to go to the car to grab something. I took off and called my parents saying what happened, and they brought me an old pair of spare glasses and stayed there a few days. I contacted him the next day, saying I made a huge mistake, that I'd like to make up and if he could bring me my glasses. We met up and talked, but then I changed my number that night and moved somewhere safe. I haven't heard from him in 3 years, but recently, the cat we had together, I got a call from a shelter that they had my cat. When I looked up the number of the shelter we got the cat from, they said they never got that cat and it was never reported in. Just an odd situation I never really talked about. My friend's theory was they wanted my baby with him. Have a good day and remember that Google, case search and white pages are your friend.